Hi,
we're the Thera Sisters.
Two sisters, therapists, and your new favorite podcast hosts. We're here to make therapy fun, comfy, and stigma-free.
We chat with fellow healers and guests about their own healing journeys, how they help their clients heal, and how they see healing in a whole new light.
How do you heal? Do you even know? Tune in and you might just find your perfect healing fit.
Don't forget to subscribe and share with a friend who could use healing vibes. Giggles, glimmers, and a whole lot of heart. Healing together, one laugh at a time.
Hey, good to see you. It's been a little minute.
It has been a minute. It's so good to see you guys.
So
Okay.
we're jumping in. So we're
Yeah,
the Thera
just-
Sisters.
Yes.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, and you are Katie Kibort-Gibbons. Did I say
Yes,
that?
I am Katie Kibort-Gibbons.
Kibort. That's
Yes,
where I got
Kibort.
stuck, was the Kibort.
Yay.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
Good to have you.
So I'm just going to go through and say a little bit about you. So Katie is a licensed clinical professional counselor specializing in adoption. She adopted her two sons from Belarus and is also an adopted child herself. She's a children's book author, and having these viewpoints of all three of these roles gives her that unique perspective on the world of adoptions. And she's here and she's thrilled to share with us the world through her books and her podcast.
Yay.
And we have.
Oh my gosh. So exciting. I'm itching.
They're such great books.
They are so good.
Do we want to kind of start there? Like, tell us your inspiration of your.
Sure. I would love to. You know, the idea for this book has lived in my brain for decades because, as you mentioned, I was adopted. And, you know, I'm old. I was adopted back in 1970. And I don't even remember going to bookstores and buying books as a kid like we did for our kids, you know, like we do now.
Yeah.
So I know there wasn't kids' books back then that really were written to understand being adopted. And then I adopted my boys in 2001, and the books that were available primarily had to do with why you're adopted. So it was more focused on the situation of the parents, you know, God formed you in my heart, not my belly, those type of messages, which is wonderful. But I always wanted to write a book that adopted kids could see themselves in the characters, that were an honest approach to the confusion that can come with being adopted, because there's a lot of confusing, conflicting emotions that come with it. And so all of a sudden, input Bandit and Pablo, you know, my dog, my cat, Bandit the dog, Pablo the cat. And as this idea was really coming to life, it took a group of therapists to be like, why the hell aren't you writing this book? And it's like, I had every excuse. Oh, well, I'm running a private practice. I'm busy. I'm this, I'm that. They're like, write the book. And the best advice was just do a first draft. Don't care if it's bad or not. Just do it. And then revise from there. And so I did. And it came so easily to just, you know, I used Google Voice, just talking into my phone. And next thing you know, it's like, I think I have a book here. Yeah. So after all that time, I finally last year wrote and published my first children's book. And I just, the whole process has been like a God thing. It's just been wonderful. But my inspiration really was to have an honest approach to what it feels like to be adopted. So it's kind of psychoeducational also, because my hope is as other kids who aren't adopted read it, maybe they get an understanding of what their cousins, siblings, friends, whoever they know who's adopted might feel, and parents reading it can maybe open up a dialogue of, do you feel this way? You know, have you ever felt this way? So yeah, I'm really proud of it. My second book is in the works.
Really? With
Another adventure. Yes. This one is The Adventures of Bandit and Pablo. We made a new friend, and it should be out hopefully in March. It'll be available on Amazon. And I just feel like this is a new direction of writing these adoption-based children's books.
That is amazing.
Yes. And it's so important like you were saying before, where there might be that beginning of the why. But after that, there are a lot more questions that children and even adults or parents have over, how come I might not connect with this person in my family, or we are different, or how do we handle other people when they ask questions, and how do we define our family? Yeah. So
Right.
yeah, it is an important book.
My second book deals with I would say probably one of the top issues that adopted people face, and that's when you look different from your family. And so in my second book, spoiler alert, Bandit and Pablo, meet a family of rabbits who one of their siblings doesn't look like them, and help them deal with, how do I handle this when people look at me and say, well, how are you in their family? You don't look the same. And that's a big issue with adopted kids, with international adoption, biracial, multiracial adoptions, cultural pieces. This is a big issue that kids feel because other kids notice, they notice. And it's a conversation that I've noticed in my practice. A lot of adoptive parents don't want to talk about. They want to just say, but we love you. Everything is wonderful, because it feels awkward. It feels, it's hard for them to hear that their child might be unhappy. And I try to help them realize that it's not unhappy with you or your family. It's unhappy with, they have to deal with this very emotionally charged situation, and they just need support. They need help doing it. And I think that that's hard when the parents aren't adopted. That has really allowed me with my boys to really understand, what they might be feeling, because I felt it. I was adopted.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, I was going to say, tell us more. It sounds like, kind of the complexity of adopting children and making space for all of those different emotions and all of those, because like you said, it sounds like a lot of times the parents are like, oh, that doesn't matter. Oh, we don't have to talk about that. We love you no matter what. But there's so much more to that. Right. And so I'm curious if you could expand on that a little bit of just.
Yeah, I would love to. And it gets into some sensitive topics, because when you look at the reasons why people adopt, a lot of times there's infertility issues, there's other emotional issues going on in the parent's life. And I've noticed in my practice that bleeds through into some of these issues when kids say things like, well, you're not my real mom. You're not my real dad. And here we have a 4 or 5-year-old who says that, and the parents take it like another adult said it to them, because they have unhealed emotional trauma, emotional pieces. And it really is about, like, they aren't. And it's an honest approach to, but you're not. And that child needs space to be able to express that and understand it. And so it is a big piece that I see when I work with adopted kids. And the minute I say to them, let me tell you something, I'm adopted, you see on their face changes, because they know right then, I get it. I get it on an emotional level. And then you have to have that empathy and support for the parents too, because if they're not adopted, it can feel very personal. And yeah, you never forget that you aren't theirs, so to speak, biologically. And so growing up, I looked like my family. I have an older brother who is biologically my parents. And so we are all, of the same culture, really background, but he looks just like my parents, just like them. And you could know he looks like my cousins, my everything. I don't. I have red hair. I have a fuller face. I talked all the time as a kid. They were all quiet people. Like there were still nuances that, okay, sure, we all looked alike, but living in that house, I was always different, and I knew that. And so it really is this understanding of, there's times you feel very lonely as a child who's adopted. And I was happy. This has nothing to do with, oh my gosh, they were neglectful of me or they treated me different. They didn't. They loved me and they are my parents. But me inside, I felt very lonely. I knew I was kind of alone in it, even before I could formulate that as an emotional understanding. You just know, it's like, you're just different. And that's the piece that I always want to help adoptive parents understand right away, is you have to keep an open heart for the fact that they they know already as a toddler, as a little kid, that there's a family out there that they belong to. There's a mom, there's a dad. Like as they get older, they are very aware that there's this missing piece to them, this missing puzzle piece, and it's okay to talk about it. It's okay. And I think sometimes parents don't have the words, they don't know how to talk about it because they don't have an understanding of it. So I hear things like, but we love you. It's okay. And it is okay. And they do love them. But I'm happy to be able to help a lot of these families and kids bridge that conversation because it is really looking at it like they just have a piece missing. And that's really confusing. And, you know, in my book with Bandit and Pablo, it truly is like there's days you feel really lonely, but then you quickly are like, okay, let's go do this because you don't live in that space. But you have to acknowledge that space, if that makes sense. Like,
And it just, I think, points to this idea of honesty, right? And
yes,
being honest about, yeah, those uncomfortable questions and honest about differences and recognizing that differences isn't a bad thing. It's just that
right,
might, yeah, create a feeling of loneliness in someone, or it might create, something in the parents where they might overextend on something. Yeah, just kind of understanding that these differences are okay and how do we live with them or acknowledge them and honor them and
right.
just let them be on some level. Yeah.
I think honoring them is a very good way to put it because kids on the same time, they don't want to feel different, you know? And so it's this fine line of you have to be open to the conversation, but it has to be very driven by your child. They have to be the ones ready for that conversation. And they don't want to feel different. They don't want to constantly be reminded, oh, but you're from here or you're this.
Right.
But when they're ready to talk about it, you need to be open for that. And I'll give you a perfect example of, parents who really were struggling and actually did a little more harm because they were trying to be very open and honest. And they adopted a child. And when that child, became a toddler and starting school, they thought, well, we're going to be so honest and tell this child why we adopted them. And they proceeded to put on this 5-year-old all the issues they were having, getting pregnant, having their own children. This is the language they use. And so this child grew up knowing, well, they didn't want me, they wanted their own. They settled for me. Not the way to handle it. It took a lot of therapy and family therapy to get that language and heal some of that hurt. And there was no intention to hurt. There was these parents were truly trying to have open and honest dialogue. But then that's the next piece, that it needs to be appropriate to the child and it needs to be focused on that child. And so, a big controversial thing that I'm going to get myself in trouble. You're going to have people wanting to cancel me on this podcast.
Little controversy.
I'm going to say it. I'm
All
going to
right,
feel a
go
little
for it.
spicy. The thing is, I am very anti gotcha days. And I mean, for Bandit and Pablo, I celebrate gotcha days. But for my kids, I did not. And I come from this place of that wasn't something when I was adopted. And I loved the fact that I wasn't set aside and made to feel different. I wasn't set apart and reminded every year that you're adopted. I had a birthday. I can remember my mom saying to me, it's like, gotcha days weren't a thing back then. Like I said, I'm a dinosaur. They weren't a thing. But I remember my mom just normalizing everything. Like I was just their daughter. And I brought that into my boys' life, where it's like, no, while I celebrate in my heart every day that God allowed me to be your mom, I also don't want you to feel like you are any different or anything, just because of how I became your mom. And I can remember when they got old enough in primary school, first grade, second grade, and they're like, well, this person has extra presents. They have a gotcha day. I'm like, sorry. And they're like, but we want the presents, I'm like, no, not going to do it, because of the fact that I want so much normalcy around the idea of this is how we became a family. And it's okay. And you don't have to be different. Now, are you traumatizing your children doing a gotcha day? No. So for all the haters out there, do your gotcha days.
Yeah.
But for me, for my children, it just wasn't something that I know as an adopted person myself, you don't want to constantly be reminded and set aside and highlighted. Be like, oh, yeah, this is the day we got you. Because that's what it's saying. And it's like, okay, that's kind of weird, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just the perspective of an adopted person. It's so different. So on the outside of that, it's like, of course, families are celebrating being able to have this beautiful human come into their life. It's based in a very beautiful thing. So I'm not criticizing the idea of it. For me, it just wasn't something that I wanted to do. You know, it's just something that normalizing adoption and how we became a family, and that this is just normal. You know, I do air quotes. I'm a counselor.
Well, I wonder too, maybe that is a conversation, for when the child is older, to maybe determine, what do you feel about gotcha days, or,
Right.
see, as opposed to making that decision for the child, when they're younger.
And I have a perfect story to share with you along those lines, because that's exactly what it was. My kids always knew the day they were adopted, always. But it was celebrated, but not like a birthday. It just wasn't put at the same level. But when they both, because they're only 16 months apart, when they both were 18, they got a matching tattoo of their adoption date in Roman numerals, same place on their chest. And they said, this is to honor the day we became brothers, which, dedication of my book, We Are Brothers. Yeah. They honored that day in the most beautiful way. And of course, they were funny. They're like, Mom, you should get one too, because it's the day you became our mom. And I'm like, I'll wait on the tattoo. But yeah, so it does go back to that. They always knew. And when they were old enough and ready, they did the coolest thing for brothers and honored that day. And so again, no hate to gotcha days. It's just not something that I tell people or share with people to do, because feeling normal is so important to adopted kids.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so I'm curious, this is just kind of more of a personal thing, but did you adopt them both on the same day? Are they?
I did. So they're internationally adopted from Belarus. And the rule then was, if you wanted two, they had to be a year apart at least. And you look at the finances in it, you look at the time that you're over there. It just made more sense that it's like, well, let's get two, because it's a lot to have to drop your life and go and be someplace for 2 weeks and, all of that. And so it was like having twins who weren't twins. It was just instant family.
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're bringing home an almost 3-year-old and an 11-month-old. And it was wild times.
I think it was.
We made it. But yeah, they were adopted on the same day.
And are they related? Are they?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah,
they became brothers through adoption.
Very cool.
And adoption, that whole process, it is a process.
It is a process. No matter what avenue you take, it's a process. And, I have a lot of feelings about that, because it's something I advocate for. There's a lot of people that this is a controversial subject, because there's a lot of people that are very preservation of the family, anti-adoption. I am very pro-adoption, because I had just a wonderful experience. My boys did too. But no matter if you go the foster care route, if you go private adoption, if you go international adoption, it is difficult. There's no way around it. And yes, it should be, because it's a big deal. But boy, there were times where it's like, do I really need to drive to the state capitol to get this thing signed again? There were just so many hoops that you jump through. And that then led to other issues, like you're watching, friends get pregnant, have babies. And it's like, and I'm just driving, getting all this paperwork signed. There's a lot of emotion behind it on both sides that, my message is always, take care of your mental health and process it, because it's grief, it's trauma, it's beautiful, but it's all these things in one.
So then you have like parents coming in with all of this struggles to the child, and then the child is bringing whatever from their small history, perhaps, or life. Right. And there's a lot of kind of work there to come together and to understand each other. There's a lot of work.
There is. I mean, I always say adoption is rooted in trauma. It's rooted in abandonment because that's what it is. But it can be beautiful. It can be joyful. It can have beautiful outcomes. And someday when I'm like leading the country in these programs and classes to help heal trauma in parents and children, someday, that's really what it is, that mental health piece where there's so much healing that needs to happen. And I think, well, and people have said this to me, well, you're a therapist, so your boys were destined to be fine. Okay, well, sure, but I'm still a mom. And
Right.
I don't do therapy with my kids per se, but yes, I have an
Still have our own
understanding.
stuff.
But I always say it, I'm also an adopted person. So there's also then a viewpoint that's very different where I understand my boys were raised in an orphanage. It was an institution. They had shift workers that it was their job to feed and hold babies. That's not the same as nurturing of a parent. And so while, yes, I understood there's a lot of trauma there and I couldn't have my own kids because of the path I had, and there's a lot of trauma there, but then you become a mom and it's like, okay, but nurturing them, that is my primary piece. But we all had to heal. Like we all had to go through that piece and heal. And I can't wear both caps. It's a little easier now that they're young adults. I can wear both caps of therapist and mom. You can't be both when they're little. You have to just be mom and find good people to help you. So I think I had an advantage knowing they needed support on some level, but I don't know. It definitely was a journey. Definitely was.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good transition just into one of our questions is healing, right? For you, what are some of the main ways you heal and how do you help your clients heal?
And so far as what part? Like when they adopt or
Well, just as well, I guess maybe a question could be like writing this book, did that help you heal a little bit more? Or do you see, like, do you use it with clients at all and like talk about how it might help them heal?
yes, with kids, I absolutely do. Let me tell you how, just for me personally, how this book helped me. I felt like it was such an honor to present this to my children because that really, like, I wanted them to feel seen and really, and then just for all adopted people out there. But that was really not, you know how sometimes you don't know you need healing in an area until it happens. And then it's like, God, that feels so good. I didn't even realize I needed to put that out there for them. I was always thinking like adopted kids. And then when I wrote it and I sent it to my boys, and the book's dedicated to Christopher and Alex, my sons. When I sent it to them and got their reaction from it, it was like, oh my gosh, like I didn't even know how badly I needed that. Not their validation, just their response, just that emotion of feeling seen, that they just really related to it. And they're like, my gosh, that's it, mom. You nailed it. Like, that's perfect. So in that sense, that's my hope with adopted kids is they can see Bandit and Pablo, who were both adopted from different situations. And I love that too, because, Pablo and his sister, like the book said, they came together. It's like foster kids, a sibling pair, they have each other. It's a little less scary because they have that. Bandit was adopted from an institution, from an animal, pound, so to speak, and that's scary. So just having kids be able to see themselves and their situation in that, I guess the message and healing is you're not alone. You're not like, there's a lot of people in that situation, and kids love animals. Who doesn't understand? When I read to classrooms or at libraries and I say, who here's adopted a pet? And every hand shoots up. Versus, who here knows someone who's adopted? And you might have one, but I always lead with who's adopted a pet because it's the best way for kids to understand adoption. It's like you took this animal and now he's in your family and it's wonderful. But that animal was scared, like he didn't know you. And so that's a lot of the healing piece, I think, when I use it in therapy. The conversations I hope it opens up as far as the parents is to be able to see from a different viewpoint that when your kids are sometimes sad, it has nothing to do with you. It's not personal. It's like that whole when we help clients with personalization and, the more negative thought processes. It's like it's not personal. And that's the healing then that adults need to do, because it goes personal when they have unresolved grief and mourning of maybe their inability to have children, or something happened and they're in, situation and they lost their children, family services, like whatever that piece is, then that's the healing I hope opens up, where they can both exist. The kids can feel this way and love you and be happy while still feeling sad for what they were taken from or what they could have had. And the same with parents. Like you can love these children while still mourning what you weren't able to experience.
Two things can be true.
Right. Right.
And yeah, I can imagine, just like you were saying, that recognizing, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one who feels this. And also just the validation, right? It's real, right? It's in a book.
Yeah.
Someone else has
Right.
their own thoughts and feelings. It's validating. And I think too, on a parent side, of recognizing, okay, they do have this sadness or this loneliness. I didn't cause it, right? And
Right. That is the key.
responsible for it, but I can help through it. And
Right.
taking away that ownership of those kind of uncomfortable feelings, perhaps. But
Right.
it's good because we all have our crap and our shit, and it gets in the way of parenting.
Exactly. It's not unique to just adoption. I mean, there's crap everywhere.
Yeah. So no, that's good. And I wonder too, like, I think just the honesty of the like being different, and that's okay. And the honesty of the feelings that, the parents and the children can have, and being open about that and transparent about that. I bet it can really maybe dismantle some of the myths around adoption.
Right. Right.
And I'm trying to, I don't know, what are some common myths maybe that or biases or something that, I don't know, you face that we can dispel?
Well, I think the biggest one I see out there, which is really why I want to get these, positive stories based with a hint of sunshine and joy on them, is there's this idea that you can adopt, but there's a lot of trauma and mental illness, whether it's international, whether it's foster care. It's like, oh, good luck with that. If you don't get them as a baby, you're going to have a tough road because there's so much trauma and mental illness. And
I hear that a lot. I do hear that.
Yeah. And on one hand, I'm going to say there is a lot of trauma and mental illness, but they're also little kids. And, we all know what little kids need. They need safety. They need, it's good old Maslow and his triangle. They need these safe pieces and safe people to grow through that. And so that's a big, I always share that my two kids are so different. And my oldest son was abandoned at a hospital, and he grew up in an orphanage. So he was 30 months old when he came home. That's a lot of development to be in an institution, to not be loved and hugged and rocked and all, you have a lot of missing pieces in that development. My youngest son, he was 11 months old when he came home, but his mom passed away when he was 6 years old. So he went to an aunt's house. She couldn't afford to feed him. He was only in that orphanage for 2 months. Very different development when he was with his family, his mother, then his aunt, in a home, being rocked, loved, all this stuff, then in an institution. Very different. And I could see it. You can see it to this day in just who they are as unique people. But my oldest son, I mean, you talk about reactive attachment a lot in adoption, and whoo, did he have it. He didn't trust anybody. It's like, I'm 3 years old and I don't trust you. I can handle this myself. It's this hyper independence trauma reaction where, he did. And I really tried to play into his strengths versus focus on how wrong that is for a 3-year-old to be so independent. But that's not the battle. Get him to trust me, get him to feel safe, get him to feel loved, And it takes time and it takes patience, because then you have this other little kid over here who is just a bouncing around normal, like, 1-year-old who really did not have the trauma. He didn't have the trauma reactions. And so there is, of course, so much that goes into that, but it's not impossible. I can remember still to this day, we were home from Belarus for about 3 weeks, and they say, don't have a lot of people over because they're attaching to you, which is true. Don't have grandma and grandpa and everyone hugging them and holding them. They need to attach to you because they don't have what babies have with the sound of the mom and the voice and, all of that. So we're home, and it was about 2 to 3 weeks that Christopher, my oldest, climbed up on the couch next to me with his little sippy cup one morning and snuggled in and lifted my arm and put it around him. And I mean, I'm fighting, just crying, because I knew how huge that is. Like, I knew this is a moment that is so monumental. I'm never going to forget it, and I haven't, because it's like there was a safety there. And it's like, okay, kid, I got you. It's like, I knew right then, it's like, I got you. Like, you are mine, you are safe, all of that. So you find those little moments, and that's what you build on. Yes, did he have all these other signs of reactive attachment? He lied when the truth worked better. He lied all the time. I mean, he had all these other things, but in those toughest times, I remember lifting my arm over him, and it's like, okay, but I got like, okay, he's going to be fine. And I mean, he is, he's wonderful. Yeah. There's a lot. It's not so much dispelling maybe the myth. It's acknowledging, yes, but it's not it's unfixable. It's not a deterrent to not do it. It just is a different way of showing patience and communication and all of those things.
And well, it sounds like it's also in that space, it's also that transparency and that honesty and talking about what this really is. Like, yes, these pieces can be here and most likely are here, but it doesn't mean we have to put shame around it, or it doesn't mean it has to be this bad.
Right.
Be this thing we can
Right.
talk about.
Exactly.
Make better. Right. So yeah, I think that's
right.
Yeah.
I think I wonder, I don't know, maybe it's this thing of the unknown, right? Where the family of these children might be unknown, or their experiences are unknown, and we weren't there. And maybe there's this idea too that if they came from my DNA, then there's more of a known, perhaps. But at the same time, even with our own DNA, we're going to experience unknowns and unexpecteds. And I don't know, just thinking out loud.
No, but it's all part of it. I mean, it's a huge, gap now. I'll back up a little bit. I was adopted as a baby.
Okay.
I mean, I was born, and within 6 weeks I was with my parents. And so
being adopted at such a young age, and then versus 31.
Very little trauma in that, because I was 6 weeks old, and so my trauma piece, if we're going to call it that, came later as I got old enough to realize, like, okay, but where's my mom who gave birth to me? Where are those people? Who do I look like? Who's like that? Like that whole piece. But when you are a year old or 3 years old or 5 years old, that's a huge gap of time, that when you have a baby and you're with that baby every day and raising it, that 5-year-old, you don't know that background of the 5-year-old that you just met. And so, there's just a big unknown with it. But it's almost like maybe my third book needs to be like a manual for parents, because I think too many times people get focused on the fear of this, what's this child need? Who are they? Like, what have they been through? Oh, like, there's so much fear, because as adults, we know it. Like, we know, oh, there's going to be something coming out of this that's not good, versus just saying, okay, so this is where I start. This child is 3, 5. This is where I start learning about them and being just that safety, just that support. And it's hard to do it. I feel like I can say it because I did it, but it is hard. It's hard to do. when, like we talked about, you have all this unresolved stuff floating around, you know?
Well, and I'm guessing too, because also if as an adoptive parent, you're going into it ready to love and wanting to love and wanting that relationship right away, probably. I don't know, but like,
Right.
and then when you have this child who
Or
has
expecting it.
or expecting it, maybe, but yeah, and so then when you have this child, right, who's coming from whatever background or the unknowns
Mhm.
that they don't have, and they have that pushback or they have that, I don't know you, can I
Yeah.
trust you, whatever.
Yeah.
And so having that understanding of, hold on, let me go into this knowing it's going to take time, knowing that
Yes.
I might.
And let me share with you.
Sure.
Let me show you my human side that goes
Okay.
right with what you're saying. When I was in Belarus and you're waiting, and they invite you to stay at the orphanage, and it's the most beautiful building they're from Mogilov, Belarus. And apparently the president of Belarus was adopted. He was like all these children, or he grew up in the orphanage. I correct myself. I don't know if he was adopted, but he grew up in the system, so to speak. So every orphanage was like a castle, and it was beautiful. And they invite you to stay there, and you get to see the kids every day, and the very first time we met Christopher, and his name was Yuri Andreevich Nasinikov. That was his Russian name. The first day we were meeting him, it's like I was overcome with love and excitement. And it's like, oh my gosh, I can't wait. And I went to go hug him, and he screamed bloody murder. Ran, hid, bawling, sobbing. And I'm like, but I love you. Like, I'm okay. It's okay. Like, I'm not going to crying, crying, crying. The workers are like, maybe you should leave. And I'm like, but I miss mom. Then, like,
Imagine the disappointment, right?
it was crushing. Just crushing. Then we go see Alex, who was Alexander Subak Valentrinovich. Good hockey name, like he should have played hockey. But then we go see him, and he's just arms up and smiling and love me. And so it's easy in that moment that's the kid that you attach to. That's the kid that's like, at least one of them loves me. Like that was the thought. So it's like, okay, at least I have one. And so as you go through the days, and I'm attaching so well with this baby, this little, 11-month-old, and this older child is looking at me like, I don't know who you are, and I don't like you, and I don't trust you. And if you come in this circle, I'm screaming. After a few days of that, the grief, the sadness, the disappointment, all those real emotions hit me to where I truly was like, well, maybe this was a mistake. Like, this kid hates me. And I'll never forget, we had like a translator guide to help us through the process. And he said to me, he's like, Katie, so if someone took you now and said, okay, from now on, you're going to go live in this country here with this family, do you think you might be scared? Do you think you might be like, I don't know who you are? He goes, you're a stranger. Just be patient. And it took that man to remind me,
Right.
who's a therapist, who knows,
Adopted.
remind me, right? It's like, oh, you're right. He's old enough to know
Yeah.
we're strangers. And it's like, God, thank you for the wake up call. But I'll tell you, from that time to those 2 to 3 weeks that he put my arm over him, it was devastating. I mean, I cried more than anything because you just feel like you're doing something wrong. You just feel that way. Where in reality, it's like this kid's adjusting, and you have to just, cry in the shower and get out there and be that support and that safety for him. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, there is this piece where they're not necessarily going to embrace you right away. And you have to be prepared for that because it's hard. And I've met with a lot of families that I've worked with that they still are kind of mad about it, the adults, and they're stuck there. And it's like, okay, but wait a minute. Let's look at this as grief. Let's look at this as disappointment versus anger, because this is a little kid. Like,
And
we're not going to be mad at them for that. But again, that's the humanness of it,
Well, and yeah, just that, how the interpreter just kind of brought you to natural instincts of human beings, right? Of especially those who've had to protect themselves. And it is about, well, it's not safe to trust you. I don't know you. Right.
Right.
And
I don't know
they're
you.
going to be standoffish. And that's competing against this person who's like, I am here to love. I know you can trust me. And, looking for that gratification of that feel good emotion, because perhaps there is this idea of, look at me, I'm a good person adopting a child. And
Absolutely.
yeah, you get
I mean, that's all part of it too. Yeah. Where you have it, in your mind where it's like, oh, I'm a hero. I'm saving these kids from this institution. And this is wonderful. And, people would say to us, wow, these kids are winning the lottery. And I'm like, don't say that. Like, don't say that to them. It just always hit me in this place of like, no, this isn't about that. But if you strip it all, the emotion down, it is such a big change. It is such a chance at something, different than what they have. But you have all these good feelings. And then it's like they're unhappy. And that happens anytime a child is old enough to know, I don't know you. Like you are a stranger danger. You are a stranger. I have left what I know, even if it's a bad situation by many people's definition, it's what I know. And now I'm in something that's a good situation by people's definition, but it's strange. I don't know it. I'm scared. I'm fearful. There's so much. And that's getting back to that myth of, yeah, there's a lot. Trauma, mental illness, disruption, abandonment, all these scary, big, negative things. Let's be honest in that, but let's also then fill in what they need to heal that. And I think that's my big message. It's like there's so much healing that can come to have such a beautiful, wonderful, relationship with your kids.
Yeah, to give them their space and their time, and be there for when it's, what's the word I guess to fill in those holes, but also like when they're ready for it too.
Yeah.
Like, they're open to it. And those, and over time, right, the idea is that those blocks, are less. And
right. Yeah, the walls crumble down a little bit.
Yeah,
they definitely do.
Yeah. Well, this is amazing. Yeah. I love all of this.
Yeah. I love everything that you have to share and the way that you've made it so accessible and relatable with your books. I'm very excited for next month to get the next one.
I know.
Yeah. A couple more parts to our podcast, talking about giggles and glimmers.
Mhm.
So we asked our guests about a recent giggle
or glimmer.
Or do we do both?
Okay. So glimmer meaning like an aha, like parenting, like love moment, that type of.
Oh, that can be one. Yeah.
Okay. And so I'd have to say like a glimmer that I have had recently is my oldest son has since moved. He lives in Montana now, which rude, moved way too far away. And my youngest son just graduated from Missouri State from college in December. So he's back home right now. And a glimmer that I had for sure as a parent, as a mom, of watching these two become their own unique little individuals is Alex, my youngest, was home. He's walking through the house on his phone and he comes into the kitchen and, I'm cooking dinner. He puts his arm around me and he's like, Mom, Buddy says hi. And I'm like, who's Buddy? Like, I don't know your friends. Like, who's Buddy? And he's like, Buddy, my brother. He says hi, Mom. And I'm like, you're talking to Christopher? And he's like, well, yeah, he's my brother. We're talking. And then he is walking away saying, I know, we got the best mom. She's making, your favorite food and you're not here to eat it and blah, blah, blah. That camaraderie between them, that connection that they brought me into, I almost cry now thinking about it because it was like a full circle moment of letting them go, letting them leave the nest and be independent, knowing where they started, knowing how it's coming back to loving my adult kids versus those little kids that took so much work and time. And now it's like, I just love them. I just love who they are. So that was huge. That was a recent glimmer that just, makes my heart just happy.
Well, that is beautiful.
The giggles, I mean, I have lots of giggles, but I'm gonna share with you two that I hang on to from when they were younger. I'm gonna give them each a giggle because they're hysterical. And I keep them in my heart. And I tell them this story over and over and they love it. It's their favorite story. So when Alex was just walking, he was maybe 15 months old, 18 months old. He learned English the same time Christopher did. So as a 1-year-old, he's speaking English like a 3-year-old. And so he knew, well, I mean, he had a big vocabulary. And, it's summer. We live in the Midwest. It's like, come on, get your flip flops on. Let's go. We got to go. Get your flip flops on. And I noticed Alex is sitting on our steps, just with his hand in his head in his hands, sobbing. And I'm like, what is the matter? What happened? And he has a flip flop and he goes, I don't know if I'm looking for the flip or the flip. I don't know what this is. And that to this day, like it is just, even when Christopher's home to visit, he's like, come on, get your flip flops on. We're late. Let's go. Like that's just become, it just sticks with us because it's like, God love this kid. He's coming from Belarus. He doesn't know what a flip flop is. And then he has one. And it's like, I don't know which one I'm looking for. Hilarious. The other one that is so funny is, again, they're learning English. Christopher knew Russian and, he lost it. And at the time we adopted him, we went to Walmart one time, which talking about sensory overload for him. He sat there in the cart and sang, but it was before smartphones. It's like you had the old, 3mm or whatever little cameras. And it's like, oh my gosh, how do we never heard anything again? But he's learning English and where we live, we're just in this flight path of helicopters going from Big Barns in St. Louis all the way, across us in Illinois to Redbud Hospital. And we're just in that path. So 3 times a day you see a helicopter. And I'd say he's like 3.5 years old and we're in our yard and I'd say, oh, helicopter. And he'd say, Kapachu. I'd say, helicopter. And he'd say, Kapachu. And, it's like he'd point to that everything. Well, my giggle is he joined the Marines after high school and he served 2 presidents on Marine One as a Marine. And he said, to his unit as he was leaving the Marines and everything, he's like, it's been such an honor to ride on this Kapachu with you. And they're like, what are you talking about? And he's like, just a little thing because I know my mom's going to see this, but loved being on this Kapachu. And it is. It's just something that I hang on to that always makes me smile. Always.
Oh, I love that. Those are great stories. Thank you for sharing. Yes. I don't know if I have any good giggles and glimmers today.
I have a giggle. So it's not related to my child, but it was something that yesterday I just busted out laughing and like even surprised me how big of a giggle it was. But so my cousin and friend, we were in school together, middle school, high school, and she found this old book from our high school that was a poem book that we all wrote poems for class or whatever. So she's going through. So she's been like voice texting me and my other friend each night a new poem from the book.
Oh, I love it.
I do too. They're terrible. I did it with such conviction. And she had this one that she wrote, and it was called, and first, the name of it is what cracked me up first, because the name of it was Goat Criminal.
Criminal?
It was either Goat Criminal or Criminal Goat, either way. And it was just like a little, like a haiku almost.
Right, of course.
To it, and it was just hilarious. And I just like burst out laughing. Yeah, so
I have to share that.
I am going to have to.
Oh my gosh, that is hysterical.
So
Criminal Goat.
yes, and it was actually pretty clever. And she said too, she's like, yeah, I'm actually kind of proud of that one. But like she read one that I had written and it was stupid. But it was like I was trying to be deep as a high schooler, and it was
Of course, that's great.
I like it.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't have anything to share.
Okay, well, we can pick from our bowls.
Yes.
Since you're not here, we
Yes.
can pick for you.
So they're just
Okay.
questions, and sometimes they're serious and sometimes they're not.
And each of us,
Okay.
so it's not just you by yourself.
Okay.
If you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be? Expert in something.
An expert.
What would it be? I think I am so fascinated with the brain that I would love to be an expert in like neuroscience. That would be great. Or an expert at like riding horses would be another one. Yes, instant.
Instant expert.
Yeah.
So I have two that I think would just serve me so well in life. One is I'm really wanting to be a homesteader. I don't know if you see like on social media, it's the big thing now. All the gardening and baking bread, sourdough bread, all this stuff.
Yeah.
I do naturally have like an interest in gardening. So I would love to instantly be an expert in that because it just seems so hard to me right now. It's like, okay, I know I put this in dirt and water, and like that's easy, but everything else is very scientific. And so I would love to instantly be an expert in just growing my own food and making my own bread.
Yes.
So my other less serious, because I could maybe live off that knowledge of being an expert and all that. I wish I was an expert in music trivia because I'm
yes.
terrible at it. And we will go play a trivia, and my husband will hear two notes, and he'll be like, "Oh, that was so and so from 1962," and it's like, "How do you know that?"
Yes.
So
I'm married to one of
wanna
those.
compete. I want to be able to compete at trivias. I want to be an expert in music trivia.
I'm with you. I'm usually the one that writes the answers down.
Let me just be the scribe. I have better handwriting.
And I still mess that up. Yeah. Tell them. Yeah. Yes.
So mine, as I'm thinking about it, the first thing that came to my head, and part of this it's weird to say, part of it feels kind of sad because of the state of like where things feel like we are in the world right now. But because my first thought was finances. Like if I could be an expert in finance, figure out how to have a bunch of money all of a sudden or something.
Yes.
But like,
and I teach us.
Yeah, right. When I think about that, because you can do so much with it. Like right now, you need that, and it's sad that it's such an important thing to do so much.
Right.
But like thinking about it in the good way of how much good it could provide, you know.
Right.
You're an expert in that too.
I know. But that was like my first thought of like, if I could figure out how to do that, and then I could figure out what to do with all of that, that would be helpful.
Right.
That's what I'd want to do.
So helpful.
So changing the world.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
This has been
It's great seeing you guys. It's
You
been
too.
so fun, and it's so good to see you.
Well,
So closing up here, I do think it's important that you promote this third book that's coming out in weeks. And I'm wondering, are you going to have like a book signing, or are you going to be anywhere?
Well, I'm hoping I could email you a list of places once I get it. I'm just now starting to work on that whole marketing piece, which I'm terrible at, but I'm really trying. So there's some bookstores, on my Illinois side. There's one in Kirkwood. There's one in St. Charles. There's some like craft fair things that I'm trying to get a little spot in. So yeah, I have a bunch planned for spring through summer. And so I would love to be able to send it to you, and I'll take any promotion you can give me of just sharing information.
Yes, we'll put it out on all our stuff.
yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Definitely let us know when and where you'll be in Kirkwood. We'll come see.
Oh, I will. I know it's a little bookstore. I need to get back in my email and share it with you. I'm hoping to get a date like April, May to just be there.
And how can people find you online?
So, www.katieshiningstories.com is where you can find me. The books are on Amazon. You can just search Bandit and Pablo and they'll pop up. And so, yeah, right now that's it. My podcast is still in the works. So I'm not going to do too much promotion of that until it's ready. But yeah, Katie Shining Stories is the website that just tells a little bit about me and Bandit Pablo. And yeah, Amazon, you can get the books. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yes, thank you. Get the book, everybody.
Hey.
Bandit. Yes.
That's right. All right.
We have to say our things. We are the Thayer Sisters.
Oh, yes, we are the Thayer Sisters.
Follow us, subscribe, like, all of the things.
Yep.
Share.
Instagram, Facebook, YouTube,
Thayer Sisters
podcast,
STL.
Spotify.
Yeah.
All the things.
They're awesome. Follow them.
Great. Thank
Yes.
you.
So great. Bye, guys. Great to see you.
You too. Bye.
Thanks for hanging out with us on the Thera Sisters podcast. We're so glad you tuned in. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter for more healing goodness, events, laughs, and all the good stuff we don't want you to miss out on. Until next time, wishing you giggles and glimmers. Out.